Welcome to the training webinar. Now that my microphone is turned on, we can talk to each other. Hi, today we are going to talk about knowledge views, and we've got a very simple part to start with. We're just going to talk about knowledge view basics at the start, but I have several different examples of different little wrinkles that you need to think about whenever you're working with knowledge views. So I've got about 6 different types of knowledge views that we'll use to explore different aspects of how knowledge views work. So kind of in the second half, we'll look at those 6 examples. But for the first half, we'll just talk about knowledge views themselves and how they work. And I am told that my mic is off. Yes, I figured that out. I looked at my VU meter over here on OBS that's running on my screen, and I saw that there wasn't a lot of movement on the UV meter while I was talking. So fortunately, we have fixed that, and we are now live and talking. So let me just start off by just creating a knowledge view. And that'll get us started. Now, I'm going to create this knowledge view, and I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to create it. Well, presumably I'm going to create it. Sooner or later, it will create it for me. There we go, webinar, and we'll create our knowledge view. So I haven't done anything, but I already have a working knowledge view. If I just go update and run now, it's going to start returning data, which is the first, I was about to say advantage, but it's equally a disadvantage of the knowledge view. The knowledge view wants to return all information that it can find in Process Director at all times. Your job with a knowledge view is to limit what it is going to return and what it is going to show you or your users whenever the knowledge view runs. So the whole point of configuring a knowledge view is winnowing out all of the data that you don't want to see. Because the second you create a knowledge view, it's configured, it's ready to run, and it's going to return pretty much everything in the system that its default configuration is asking it to return. Now, there's a couple of things with knowledge views that you have to keep in mind. One, you have to constrain what it returns, which we'll spend a little bit talking about. Number 2, knowledge views are expensive in terms of system resources. And so the more records you return, the longer it's going to take for your knowledge view to run, and the longer it's going to take to pull back that data. Now, this one pulled back the data pretty quickly because, as a default, knowledge views are configured to never return more than 100 rows of data. And if you look up here at the very top, it says you've reached the max number of results. Use a filter for more specific results. And then right below that, it says webinar, 100 items. Well, it's only showing me 100 items because that's the default configuration, only show 100 items. That's a pretty good rule of thumb to live by. However, if you are showing your end users, in most cases, more than 100 records, you're probably doing more harm than good in terms of the UI that you're giving to users. It becomes increasingly difficult at a very rapid pace on a logarithmic scale once you start getting above 100 rows of data returned to your end users. Because now you're asking them to take a look at what is essentially a spreadsheet that has hundreds of rows in it and to find something that might particularly interest them in all of those hundreds of rows. People generally don't want to go through row after row of data to find what it is they're looking for. Now, there are a couple of good ways around this. You can provide them with filters that they can use to perform their own searches. You can, of course, only ensure that you're returning the minimal amount of data necessary to do whatever it is you need to do in the first place. But 100 rows is a good max to think about. You won't have to worry too much about system resources if you're only returning 100 rows, and your knowledge views will run pretty quickly. I have seen customers, in fact, we have a case that I guess here at BP Logix, it's kind of famous. We had a customer who decided that their home page for every single user should be a knowledge view that returned, like, I think it was like 2,500 to 3,000 rows. So every time anybody logged in, and they had a lot of users, by the way, it wasn't like some small customer. They had a fairly large user base, which means that at any given time, there were hundreds of users who were going to their homepage. And every time you went to your homepage, you had to be served, 2,500 rows of data. And of course, then there was the tech support ticket that they imposed that said, our system sure does run slow for our users. Well, yes, because at any given time, 10 or 15 people are trying to return thousands of rows of data just because they want to look at their homepage. So you're going to have to work your knowledge views to return as little data as possible because they are expensive in terms of system resources. I've explained this many times. I'll do it one more time since this is specifically where that explanation would go. Knowledge views are complex because a knowledge view can return anything from anywhere in Process Director, which means, and we don't know what you're going to ask for. So we have to create this extraordinarily complicated SQL statement kind of on the fly, just slotting in variables based on what it is that you select in the configuration. And we have to pass this complex SQL statement, and we have to chop through millions and millions of rows of data potentially to try to return this data to you. The more data you ask for, the longer that is going to take. So you need to be very careful in terms of how you construct your knowledge views to return the appropriate amount of data. So whenever you first create a knowledge view, let's just go through the property tabs that are those that are the most concern to you and talk about their configuration a little bit. In most cases, what you want to return to an end user are instances of a specific form. Most knowledge views that you build are going to be associated with a specific application, like a request for leave. And so if you want to provide the user with the ability to see all of their past leave requests, for example, then you need a knowledge view to do that. So part of your leave request application will be a knowledge view that you will probably call My Leave Requests so that they can open it up and they can look back at their old leave requests and they can see when they last took leave or whatever it is that they want to do with their old leave requests. Normally, this would be a pretty small knowledge view because the amount of time that people are allowed to take each year is, of course, limited. And so there's probably no more than, I would say, 10 or so leave requests a year from any specific individual. And if they're there for 5 years, even that only is going to return, 50 rows? And in most cases, probably less. I mean, there are people like me who don't take a lot of time off. And when they do, they take big chunks. And so they might only have, 1 or 2 leave requests per year. So that knowledge view is never going to return a lot of data for that individual user. But of course, you have to tailor it for that user. Whenever you're showing things to users, what they primarily want to see, of course, is the form. Because the form instance that they fill out and submit is their primary user interface tool that they use in Process Director. End users don't see timelines or other objects. They really just see the forms that they fill out. And those forms are how they communicate with Process Director. So that's what you want to show them. Now, if you're an administrator, there are times when you might want to see knowledge view definitions or knowledge view instances or timeline, not knowledge view instances, timeline instances or timeline definitions, or you might want to see case definitions. And of course, sometimes for end users, if you have some case management apps, there'll be some case instances that you're going to need to show them. But if you're only going to be showing, as you are in most cases, form instances, then there is one important property on the Properties tab that you need to fill out, and that is the forms associated with Knowledge View, because you're going to want to ensure that your Knowledge View only returns form instances for whatever particular application. As I said, like the leave request application. That's the only one that you want to show form instances for. So you would go in and limit that to a specific form instance. So in this particular case, I'm going to pull, let's see, let's actually pull from, now I can't remember where it is. I know it's in archive, and I'm only pulling it because there are a lot of records in it, and we'll filter these records a little bit later. And I always forget where my thing is that has hundreds and hundreds of records. Oh, and I just looked at it, and now I can't I can't remember where it is. Is it in reporting? No, it is not. Although that would, no, in fact, I know what that one is. What did I do with it? Maybe it's stream actions, data, completed sample application. No, that's process invoices. Darn. Okay, I might just be able to run the Knowledge View and to grab my forms off of it. That's it. Data form company. This is the one. So data form. But that doesn't tell me where it is. Okay, we're gonna have to find it here real quick. So I'm gonna do something on the columns tab. We're not supposed to be at the columns tab yet, but I am gonna make a little change here to my columns tab, and I'm gonna pick object information folder path so I can figure out where my form is that I need to use for this thing. Let's run this again. And again, it's gonna take a little while, but it is archive business value performance data source data form. Okay, great. Business value performance source data form. So we'll go back to our properties tab, and that will tell me what form I want to associate with my Knowledge View. Archives business value performance data source data form. So that is the form that I want to use for my data. So now when I run my Knowledge View, the only form instances it's going to show are form instances from that data form. So great. And if we look down here, we won't see any other forms. We will see, for some reason, a lot of workflows. I guess I've been doing a lot of customer support work with customers who have some older applications, but the only forms come from that data form. Okay, so it's working. It's doing exactly so far what the Knowledge View has been configured to do. I've now limited the form instances that it returns to only form instances of the data form. Now, I still have a problem in that it's returning a lot of things that are not form instances. These are, in fact, a bunch of workflow instances that are being returned. Okay, I don't want to see those, so I obviously have some more work to do in configuring my Knowledge View, but the first step is done. I have filtered to only show the forms that match a specific form definition. If I want to filter the rest, I really need to go to the Options tab. So we're going to skip the Configure tab for now, although we are going to come back to it, and indeed come back to it several times. But we're going to go to our Options tab. Now, our Options tab gives us a variety of options that we can used to determine what the end user sees. So for right now, I've got a whole bunch of options selected. Let's look at my knowledge view. Let's talk about some things I don't want to see on a knowledge view that I'm creating for end users. Also, I don't want to show this version of the knowledge view. So we're going to have to make a change here so that we can see the two possible different UI conventions that you'll see in a knowledge view. If you're on any version below 6.1, this is probably what a knowledge view is going to look like for you. And so over here on this far right column, there is all of these, actions. And so I've got properties, I've got references, view processes, view, which will actually open up the object itself. I usually don't want to show all of this stuff to the end user. Some other things I don't want to show to the end user is if they check one of these boxes, they're going to get a bunch of action buttons across the top of the screen. I'm pretty sure I don't want them to see those either. And I certainly, irrespective of what permissions they might have, if they don't have delete permissions or whatever, they won't see some things, but I'm pretty certain I probably don't want them to export any items. I probably don't want them to get into the business of looking at properties of any items, and I certainly don't want them to cancel any processes. I really don't want to give them access to any of this stuff here at all. Now, if you're on 6.1 or higher, and actually if you're on 6, you can do this too, the UI is changed for knowledge views for version 6 and above. It's optional, but once you turn this on, and by the way, we're going to make this the default option, so just so that you know, it soon will, well, I think we're still going to keep it optional, but we're going to change the default to on instead of off. And now if we run it, we're going to see a slightly different UI. Although we still have the same problems, right? If I click this checkbox, I now get prettier, but still dangerous buttons up here at the top. I've got a 3-dot menu over here, which actually contains my properties, references, and view processes as a drop-down. And so here I have, since it's a form instance, I have the fourth option for view. So just because it's prettier than the ugly old style icons over here, I still don't want people to do this either. So I do have to limit what my end user has access to do from this options tab. So the two things that I need to do is I need to turn allow these actions on objects. I'm going to need to turn that off. Now, this is what causes those buttons to appear at the top of the page if somebody selects an item by checking the checkbox on the far left of each row. So I'm going to turn those off. So we have this convenient little turn everything on, turn everything off checkbox. I can turn that on and I can make those disappear. And let's just do this one at a time. We'll update and run it with what we've got here. And now I don't have checkboxes over here. So I can't actually click a checkbox to make my buttons appear because they're not allowed to have any actions. If you're not allowed to do any actions, we just don't show you the checkboxes in the UI. I still have all of these dangerous things happening over here, but we're going to fix that too, because down here in the display action icons for section, again, we can turn that on and turn that off so that we can just turn all of that stuff off. So now when I run my knowledge view again, I don't have the 3-dot menu, or if we were to go back and look at it in the old style, which we're going to do one more time, and then we're going to turn 6.0 back on, and we're going to keep it. If I go back and look at it the old style, again, no icons on the far right side. They've all disappeared as well. So now I've got a UI that's much more suitable for end users. And as I said, we're going to go ahead and just turn that back on there, and we'll just save that configuration. So now in our knowledge view, remember we saw our forms. Let's run it again just so that we see it. So we see our forms, that's good, but we don't want all of these workflows and timeline instances and other instances to show up there. So on the options tab, I need to ensure that all I really see are form instances. Now, by default, it's set up to show form, workflow, timeline, and case instances. So when you create a new knowledge view, it will show you all four of those things. Well, I actually don't want to see workflow instances or timeline instances or case instances, so I'm going to turn those all off. And once I do so, now I have a knowledge view that will only look at form instances, and because of the changes we made on the Properties tab, will only show me instances of my data form. So now I've got this great little knowledge view that only shows me my data form stuff, which is what I am intending to show to my end users. Now, I still have a problem in that I have 1,000 of these data forms running out through my system, and the system is kind of returning them on sort of a random basis. It returns a record in order of how it finds them in the process directory database while it's returning data. And so that order is not really predictable. So I would obviously want to probably sort this. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And I don't really get, I mean, here I've got records, there's record number 900. Remember, I have 1,000 here. So there's record 970, 985, 986, but I've also got record 37. Is there any single digit records? I don't think so. There's 41. Doesn't really matter. Out of my 1,000 data form instances that I have, I'm returning only 100 of them. So I'm really getting a random sample of my records. So that's probably the next thing that I need to fix, or certainly something I need to fix before I show it to my end users. But fine, I now I'm getting back the data I want to get. Now my job is just figuring out A, how I want to display that data, and B, any filters that I want to put onto it later. So great, I've got the data that I want. Now I can concentrate on other configurations. So now we will go back to the Configure tab, and we'll talk about some different types of knowledge views that I can pull. Most of the time, you're going to want to pull a content list knowledge view. It's called a content list knowledge view because it's really just pulling items out of the content list, in this case, form instances that you want to display to your end users. That's not the only type of knowledge list or knowledge view that you can create. You can create a task list. Now, there is the one global task list that always shows you all of your tasks. Whenever you display it anywhere on the UI, you generally use that in the user's workspace homepage so that they can, open up Process Director and get instant access to their task list. But you might also want to create unique task lists that are only associated with a particular application. And so you can create your own unique task lists just sort of willy-nilly. There's also you can create an items I can run task list, which is a custom version, again, of a global task list that already exists. Now, I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure how useful the items I can run one is. The global one is fine, although that global one can get a little big and a little unwieldy. And in that case, if you have hundreds and hundreds of forms, it might not be super helpful. So there might be times where you want to create some smaller items I can run lists that just list the objects that a user can run, but lists only a small subset. I don't think people do that much, although it might be something you want to think about. But most of the time, you're going to do a content list, and then probably as a distant second, you're going to make custom task lists. Now, content list knowledge views and task lists are two entirely different things. By default, when you open a content list knowledge view and it shows you all of these forms, this is fine. This does what it's supposed to do. But let's say that on this particular form, I had a task that was assigned to me. If I just create a content list knowledge view, and even if I filter it to show, only forms where I am running in a current active task, if I try to open it from here, content list knowledge views will not open it in task context. Even if I had a task assigned to me in this knowledge view, this would be the buttons that I see. Well, it shows me a submit button because that's the default button because it's never been submitted. I created it with a stream action. But I'm not going to see result buttons. I'm not going to see my task with the proper task results for this particular knowledge view. That's not going to happen. It's going to open it up as if I did not have a task. If I have a task list, in the task list, if I open up a task, and I don't think I have any tasks on the system, so I can't really open anything up now. I think if I run this, it's just going to be empty. Yeah, I don't have any tasks, which is good. That's what I expected. But if I open up any item that appears in a task list, it will open it in task context. So if I have a task assigned there, it's going to show me the appropriate completion buttons. And so we get a lot of tech support saying, hey, I created this knowledge view. People open it up and they can't complete their task. Well, yeah, because you've made a content list knowledge view. Except I can fix that. There is an option right down here. When a form instance is opened, treat it like it was opened from a task list. If I click that, then I have kind of the best of both worlds. I have a knowledge view that will show me, well, in this case, everything, all 1,000 of my records. Well, it won't show me all 1,000, but it'll show me 100 of them. So it's going to show me my records. And if I do have a task assigned in one of these records and I click on it and open it up, I'm going to get task completion buttons down here exactly the way that I would expect. Okay, great. That is good for me because now I can see all of the form instances. But if I have a task assigned, when I open up a form instance, it'll give me an opportunity to complete that task. So that's kind of an important option to think about whenever you are showing users a knowledge view, and you also want them to be able to complete their task from that knowledge view. If you don't click this button, they won't be able to do that because it will not open the form in task context. But clicking that checkbox there will cause that to happen. So that's an important option. Most of the other options on here are not super important. There are ones that you might want to exercise on a routine basis. The show export to CSV icon. When this is checked, and we'll update and run it, what I will get here is a CSV icon that if I click on it, will prompt my download, and I can go ahead and save my knowledge view as a CSV file, which I can then open in Excel, since that's the default application to open CSV files. And so if I need to do some sort of pivot tabling or what have you, or some sort of data mining in Excel, I can do that simply by exporting it to CSV, opening up in Excel. Obviously, I'd have to, go to File and Save As, and I'd have to save it instead of a CSV, I need to save it as an XLX file or XLSX file, and then I could do whatever I needed to in Excel once it was saved as Excel to mine that data. So there is also ability to export to Excel. That's a little more complicated, has a couple of more moving parts. The export to CSV just works, but export to Excel takes a little extra work, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later in the export to Excel section. But it is available to you, and you can export to Excel. And by the way, if you are going to export to CSV, you can also change the knowledge view results. Now, by default, Knowledge view results display in a grid. That's what we've been looking at this whole time. However, you do have the option to not display the knowledge view at all. I could simply export this knowledge view to CSV by picking export to CSV, or Excel, the same, although again, as I mentioned, we'll have to talk about that in more detail later. But if I hit export to CSV, great. And I also get some extra options. I certainly can download the file, or I can set a Windows file path to download the file. I can set a desired file name, because by default, the file name is just going to be webinar. So I could create a custom CSV file name. And also I could set a URL to call when complete. So if I go to a URL, every knowledge view has its own URL, and assuming people can run that URL, or that they're allowed to run the knowledge view, they have appropriate permissions, then the knowledge view runs. Now, because I have it set to exported to CSV and not displayed in grid, this knowledge view is never actually going to display. There's no visual display because I've said to export it to CSV. I don't really even need this export to CSV icon because I'm never going to see this knowledge view with this configuration. So if I just go ahead and save the knowledge view now, and I run it, I don't see anything. All I see is, hey, what do you want to do with webinar? And because I've already got one called webinar, it gives me the parentheses 1 CSV file. Do I want to save it or not? So the knowledge view is running. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to, but I don't see the knowledge view because I have turned off displayed in grid. So all of these options other than displayed in grid are invisible knowledge views. You can either invoke them via a goal. So one of the things that we might do with a goal is to run a process. For example, I have an example of that up here. I believe it's in support. DA notification. I'm not running it off a knowledge view. I'm running it off of a business value. So that is not, in fact, an example of it. Rats. So I thought I had an example of that running just to run a process. I know I do have an example. I'd have to look here in archive on, let me see if I can find a good example of one that actually does it. I actually wanted to show a goal that would call it, that would run a knowledge view. But I'm not going to waste your time by searching through things for examples that just occur to me while I'm talking. So we'll just stick with the script on this one. But no matter what I do for any of these knowledge views, whether I run a process or what have you, or export to Excel or CSV, none of these are display options. Well, calendar is a display option. It displays as a calendar. We'll be talking about calendar K views next week in the training webinar, so we'll give this a much more of an in-depth coverage. So the thing to remember is if I want the user to see it, I need to display it in a grid. That is the default. And in general, if I want them to be able to export it, I'm going to click the Show Export to CSV icon, or Show Excel, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Other than that, there's not a lot on this tab that is super important. I think I've covered the important options that are available to you. So let's move to the next tab, or the next two tabs that are super important, and that is the Columns tab and the Filter tab. Let's start with the Columns tab. On the Columns tab, this is where we decide what data we want to show to the end user. Now, we are somewhat limited now in showing data because we've decided, as in most cases, we're only going to show the the data form, and we're only going to return instances of the data form and no other objects. That doesn't mean that we cannot query other objects, but we are a bit limited. For example, if I have a form and it's associated with a timeline, this particular form is not. But if it was associated with a timeline, then I would have the ability to also pull back data from any associated timeline with that particular object. In this case, there is no timeline associated with the objects. They're just forms without timelines. So I couldn't even do that. I mean, I could try, but there's not much that would show me. I'm really limited because I have selected a form instance and they're just data forms and they're not associated with any process. The only thing I can really query in this particular knowledge view are form-related data. Now, I can certainly pull any of the form fields off of that form, and that's probably the most common thing that you will do is to set up a column to pull back some of that form data. I'm going to need to, I think I got ahead of myself. I'm going to need to click these build buttons associated with each column. So let's say I wanted to pull back the company name. I'd need to change the column name for that. And then I would go into the build button here and click it. So it would open up the choose system variable dialog box. And I would go into form and form field. And when I do that, because this knowledge view is explicitly associated with the data form, it's only going to show me form fields from the data form. So I can just pick company there and click OK. And now when I run my knowledge view, it's going to show me the name of the form instance, and then it's going to show me the company name for this fictional company. By the way, all of this data, I should point out, is fictional. None of it is real. None of these are real companies. I pulled all of this mock data from an online service that provides it. And so all of this is bad data. And I have to say that, and I have to make it very clear that this is all fake data, because the second that YouTube thinks this is real data with real addresses and phone numbers, it will automatically put my video private because it will accuse me of trying to expose PII for real people. I don't use real people. I don't use any real data. This stuff is all made up. So there's no one's privacy to violate with any of my data. So I can pull the company. And by the way, you are going to want to change these knowledge view columns. Other than the name column, which is really the one useful column that a knowledge view provides by default, all of these other columns are pretty much useless. So you're going to want to replace them with other data. Now, look, I might want the form submitter, so we'll just call it submitter. And once again, I'm limited to form data now, but I can pull form and form submit user. And I could pull form submit date, but it's all going to be the same for all of these forms. So that's probably not helpful. In fact, I probably could just get rid of both of these columns. Well, maybe not. Let's move this column up. And let's go with city. And we'll go in and we'll go to form field, and I should be able to pull city. Okay. And you know what? Let's actually add one more. I shouldn't have deleted that field, I guess. Let's add one more field and let's move it up. And by the way, we do have a enhancement ticket to take the reordering system that we implemented on custom tasks on the form to be able to manually drag and drop these rows. We do have a enhancement ticket to drag and drop rows here in the columns tab to make reordering it way easier than clicking those buttons. But we are going to put in the ID of the company here. So once again, we're going to need to go in and grab form and form field, and then we can grab the company ID. And so now, and I guess the form submit user is kind of dumb in my case because I am the form submit user in all of them. So that's probably not a very helpful one to throw in there. So I guess what I should have done is deleted that one field and then just switched that one over from a submitter to company ID. But now I've got a fairly useful knowledge view. Because in my form, I ensured that I had a unique number for each of these companies. I now have a unique way of finding the company. So if I know that number, I could find that company. If I just know the name, obviously I'm going to have to do some searching or what have you, some other filters. But I now have at least one thing that gives me a unique record. So if I have a company ID, then I'm good to go. I can find that ID and just return that single company in my knowledge view. So the columns tab is important. Now, each of these columns by default has a display of always, which means no matter what I'm doing, it's going to show me that column. I don't need to actually do that. I can have a column that exists but never show it. I can only show it if somebody is looking at it on the desktop, or only show it in Excel or CSV, or only show it if this knowledge view is invoked by a custom script. I know most of you don't have the SDK, but for those who do, you can actually make knowledge views that have secret hidden columns that only scripts can see, or reports can see, or mobile devices can see, or that are only displayed whenever I'm, exporting it to a database, because you do have that option to export the knowledge view as a table to a database. So, okay, cool. I can determine when I want each of these columns to appear. Now, this might be useful, especially if you have a lot of people on mobile devices and you have a fairly large knowledge view. What you might want to do is have all of the columns available if I'm on desktop. But for some of the columns, you might show a bunch of columns in mobile, but not show them on desktop, or vice versa, so that people who are on mobile or desktop get slightly different versions of the knowledge view, which you might tailor, for example, to show better on the smaller viewport on a mobile device. So you've got some options there about when each of these columns might be displayed. Of course, if I am returning a single form and I want to be able to edit in my form, you probably wouldn't want to give this to the end users, but for administrators, what you might want to do is turn on in-place edit to allow you to edit some of these fields. Now, in-place edit is not going to work yet, but let me see if I can show you what in-place edit looks like real quick. Yeah, it's not going to work yet. So we have to make a couple of other settings changes. So if I turn on in-place edit, I do have to go back over here to the options tab, because there are a couple of things that I need to turn on for this particular thing. I need to be able to, oh, by the way, I never discussed this at the bottom. This users will have permission to create. It's not super important if you don't have users who have access to the content list, but as a general rule, you turn all of this stuff off as well. Now, for turning on the in-place edit, there are a couple of other options here that you need to turn on. And right off the top of my head, I've forgotten them. But that is why documentation is so important, because that is documented in our documentation. And I am going to search in-place edit inside quotes like that. And that should turn that bit right there. And I can go down to in place edit and it will tell me I have to have the properties checkbox checked on allow these actions on object and the children checkbox checked on display action icons. So I've got to come down here and it was properties and children that also have to be checked. And now when I update and run, I should be able to click on an item and it will show me the name of the item and I can change the name of the item right there. So O'Keefe, Killback, and Casper, I'm going to assume that maybe I missed one of the L's there. So I am just going to make that change and hit enter. And now it is O'Keefe, Killback, and Casper. Now, I really don't like the fact that my names are different. So we're going to look at the form real quick. And we're going to look at O'Keefe, Killback right there. I've got my two L's. So it made the change right in my knowledge view. But I am now going to change it right back because I want my company name and the name of the form to match. So I'm just going to change it and hit enter. And now I've made the change to O'Keefe, Killback, and Casper. And if I open the form again, I can see that I'm now back to a single L in Killback. So now I'm a happy camper. So in-place edit is kind of cool. I certainly would be real careful about showing it to end users. But if you are an admin and you want to do in-place editing, which is a very common request, you have the ability to do that. You just have to remember that if you're going to turn on in-place editing on the columns tab, you got to come back to the options tab and turn these two on. I just couldn't remember which two it was that I was supposed to turn on whenever I came back to that tab. But happily, I've documented that. All right, so that's pretty much everything that we need to know about the columns tab, except for sort ordering. By default, I get one column that I can sort on, and that column is the name column. Now that seems cool, except for this problem. All of my names are going to be kind of the same. The one change that we're going to have on my names are the company number. And even though this looks like it is in alphabetical order, it's not really. It's in even though it looks like it's in numeric order, it's not. It's in alphabetical order. And I can demonstrate that by coming down here and saying, okay, this is company 360, 362, 363, 37. And then back to 375, 378, blah, 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 and then back to 41. This is alphabetical sorting. And with alphabetical sorting, number values are just not going to sort in the way that you think they are. Now, if this was a number like a zip code, alphabetical sorting would be great. It would be exactly what I wanted because I know I have all 5 digits and I just want them sorted in basically alphabetical order. Numerical order would be different. Obviously, in numerical order, 37 and 41 would be at the very top of this list if it was sorted numerically. It's not. So this sort of numeric sorting doesn't work great for me in this context. Although another sorting method like ID might not work great for me either. Because again, I'm sorting alphabetically. These are not numeric fields. These are text fields. Text fields get sorted alphabetically. So again, I have the same problem. I go from 281 to 30 to 303 and so forth. So sorting is going to be done alphabetically and you need to keep that in mind. Ideally, these would be numbers, but using the general rule, if I'm not going to do math on it, it's not a number. These are all text fields, and so these are all being read as text with this particular sorting method. So you need to keep in mind that you have those sorting. You can sort ascending or descending, but you have to keep in mind that whatever sort method you choose, it's all going to be alphabetical sorting. So just understand that there are some limitations in that sort of sorting, because we don't count numbers like zip codes as numbers. They're alphabets, or they're alphabetically sorted. So this is intentional because those are the most likely ways that you're going to sort things, but it is the sort method, so keep it in mind. It does impose a little bit of a limitation. Now we go to the filter tab. So far, we already have one big filter. Well, we have two big filters that we've added. First, we've decided we're only going to see form instances. So it's only going to return us form instances. Second, we've decided we only want to see form instances of this data form. So now it winnows it down to just those 1,000 form instances that exist on the system. But I don't want to see all 1,000 of those instances. I want to see a much smaller sample of those instances that might be relevant to me. One of the easiest filters to put on is a filter that says, okay, let's only show forms where the user is the form submit user. So that would be generally a great filter. So you could say, like previously when I talked about leave requests, let's say this was a leave request form. Well, the most logical filter to put on that form so that the user could only see their own leave requests would be to have the form submit user equals the current user. That way, when the knowledge view ran, it would only show the submissions that that user made. That's a great way of just automatically filtering the form. Unfortunately, that method is not available to me because I am the form submit user for all 1,000 of these forms. So it gives me a lot of data, which is what I want. Unfortunately, this is a system that largely only I use, so I can't have both 1,000 form instances and 30 different people submitting forms. So that makes demonstrating that a little bit harder, but that would be the normal condition that you would use. In my case, we're going to have to do a search. We're just going to have to be able to search for different companies. So we're going to add a filter. Now, by default, Process Director thinks that you're going to want to filter by form field. And as it happens, in this case, that's exactly what we want to do. So we're just going to click the build button. It's going to open the choose system variable dialog box, and I'm going to pick company, and I'm going to hit OK. And now I have to choose an operator. Operators are always important, and different operators do different things. And that is something that we'll have to discuss in more detail in a little bit. But in most use cases, the operator you want to use for a search is going to be contains. The reason is that it's a looser operator. If the contains value is blank, it will by default return everything. So if I have a contains filter, but I don't put anything in, it doesn't really affect my knowledge view. It still shows me all of my data. A lot of times people want to use the equals filter, but you generally don't want to do that for a couple of reasons. First of all, by default, if I use the equals filter, equals nothing returns nothing. So I know I have 1,000 records here, but I'm not seeing it because the equals operator is very exact. So there is no form with a name that equals this. And since you can't find an exact match, it will return nothing. And there's no company, in fact, with a name that equals this. So equals is really, really tightly, A, it is very tightly interpreted, and B, it by default returns nothing. Contains by default returns everything, which is probably the better option. So if I just type in the word plum here, I think there are a couple of companies that have the term. There aren't any companies that have the word plum in their name. Let's find a company. Okay. What was the one that I just had done? Kilburn or something like that. Let's try KIL, and update and run. And there we go. Killback. That was it. So there's my Killback. I've also got Kill Black, Tremblay, and Rich. I've got Skiles. Uh, Boy, there's a lot of Killbacks in here. But there we go. Now I have a search. And by default, and notice this happens when the knowledge view runs automatically. It's only returning records for companies whose name contains the letters KIL in whatever term that appears, although apparently Killback is a very popular name. So let's go back here. And that's great. That gives me a default. And by the way, I'm well under my limit of 100. That's pretty cool. So I'm happy with that. I'm only returning however many rows that was. But in most cases, I'm gonna have, this is a case where I've automatically decided what companies I want to see. Now, in this particular scenario, I would most likely want to have an end user search for a company. So what I need to do is have a prompt user when run checkbox checked so that rather than, and it is going to impose whatever I put here on the beginning, whenever the knowledge view runs, but I can leave it blank and it'll return everything. And now that I've checked that prompt user, now the user can search for what he wants. So let's look for KUP since I see a name that contains those letters and I search for it. Well, there we go. Kufal or Kufal, however that is pronounced. There's a lot of Kufal names in here. Well, 4 of them for these companies. So I can just pull back. I misspelled that. Whatever name I want and do a search, and it's just going to pull back all of the companies that in this case say Streich as the name, and it's going to pull them all back for me. And so it's going to give me a much more limited number of companies and gives me as an end user the ability to search. Now, it is certainly possible to have both filters that you want to display to the end user and filters that you want to impose that you don't want the end users to see. And that's perfectly fine. For example, let me add a condition. I've got 2 ways of adding conditions. This is more of a condition builder thing than a knowledge view thing specifically, but you can add an and condition or you can add or conditions. And I can have a multiplicity of both or and conditions. So if I was to use this configuration right here with these 3 filters, it would show me records where either these 2 conditions were true or this condition was true. People get themselves into a fair amount of trouble trying to get the right data back because they don't know when to use and or conditions. And that's one of the reasons why we have them sort of highlighted here and in this little gray box. These are both together. They're both going to be evaluated together. Both of these conditions, because I'm using and, both of them must be true for this condition to evaluate as true for each record to determine whether or not that record is going to be returned to me. Once you throw an or in there, you are increasing the number of records that might be returned. So that's the easiest way of thinking about the and or condition. And conditions always return fewer records because and conditions place more constraints. Or conditions will always return a larger number of records because now I'm increasing the number of constraints that might be applied to determine, or I'm actually decreasing the number of constraints that might be applied because I'm saying, okay, I'm going to allow two things now in this example instead of just one thing. And so, and always returns fewer records or always returns more records. So just keep that in mind to figure out what you want in terms of the records that are returned. And we're going to go ahead and remove this condition. So on my and condition, so I'm sure I want the users to be able to search for a user, but I also have some limiting things that I want to put on. I don't want the users maybe to go back and search, for the last 5 years. Maybe I only want them to search for the last year or so. So I might put in another condition that is not going to be visible to the user, but that will limit what records I can see. So for example, I can go and look at the form submit date. And I can say, and this is going to get confusing, I'm going to say only show me records where the form submit date is greater than, and we'll pick days ago, and we'll pick 180 days ago. Okay, so let's go through the syntax of what we're talking about here. I want the form submit date to be greater than 180 days ago. That sounds like, at first look, that what I'm asking for is for things that are more than 6 months old, because I want the date to be greater than 180 days ago. However, that's not what we're doing here. People get confused on this all the time. I get confused on it all the time. It's just a confusing setup because this days ago 180 is misleading. What you're actually saying is, give me whatever the date was 6 months ago. So in our case, it is March 20th. So what would that be? September 20th? Yeah, 3 to 9, 6, September 20th. So 180 days ago might not be September 20th. It might be September 19th. It might be September 21st. I don't know exactly. Let's pretend that 180 days ago was September 20th. So what this days ago 180 is going to return is actually a date value, September 20th, 2024. So what we're really saying is, I want the form submit date to be greater than September 20th, 2024. So I think the verbiage here of days ago 180 kind of confuses people, but just remember, this is a date value. It's not going to say, oh, find me everything that happened within the last 180 days. It says, find me something where the date is greater than whatever the date was, September 20th, 2024, 180 days ago. So that's just important to remember. Now, is this going to work? No, it's not going to show me anything because I've not submitted any. These records are older than 180 days. So it's not going to show me anything. If I wanted to see stuff that was prior to September 20th, I guess I could change this to less than. And I could update and run it. And then in that case, it would show me everything. But the user doesn't get to choose that date. That date is just sort of, that's a filter that gets applied that limits the records that get shown to the user. So to make something more useful, let's take company ID. So let's go with ID. So we'll go with form and form field, and we'll pick a company ID. And in this case, we'll say a company ID that is less than 100. So company ID less than 100. And now we'll update and we'll run. And it's giving me nothing back. Company ID less than 100. Okay. What if we do a greater? Oh, it's trying to probably trying to do a. I hope not, but it's probably trying to do a numeric comparison there. Okay. Uh, so that's not a good example, obviously. Um, let's say starts with 1. There we go. So now that will give me, well, it'll give me all of my 100s, but it will also give me 10. And will also give me 1,000 because it starts with 1. So it doesn't give me my 100 records. I'm still reaching a max number of results. So let's change that a little bit here because this is not a number. This is a, if I, that'll give me only 1,000. So it has to start with 10. So let's go update and run. Okay, well, there we go. These are all the numbers that start with 10. So it will be 10, 100, 1,000, and then my 100 and 101s. So there we go. I now have a smaller subset of records. Now, when I do the search, it's only going to search within the smaller subset of records. So it's only going to bring me back company 1000, Herman, Will, and Heaney, because that's the only record that matches my company name here. Heaney matches HEA, and the other filter is still in effect. So sometimes we get people saying, hey, I don't understand why my users can't search for something. And we'll say, okay, well, show me what you have on your filter tab. And I'll see something like this, and I'll go, well, it's that second filter that you have on there. You're not searching, the user isn't searching the whole record set. They're only searching the small subset that you have provided to them. And so those are the only records that they can search through. One other thing about knowledge use, because it is 1108, and we got to move on from the simple stuff to the more complex stuff. At the top of each column, irrespective of how the particular sorting is set in the columns tab. So the default is to sort for the name column. You can, of course, sort any other column, either ascending or descending, simply by clicking on the name once or twice, and you'll get the little icon for ascending sorting. And if I click on it again, I'll get the icon for descending sorting. And so I can now do that as an end user automatically, just to sort it however I want to sort it. So those are the basics of knowledge views. So if we go back over here to the normal knowledge view and we run it, this is just a regular knowledge view where I have thrown some objects in and I've added in the editing, in-place editing. So you can just go through and make all of these edits. So super simple. Don't have any other weird things happening on that knowledge view. This is most of the knowledge views that you're going to do. By the way, I have all of these encapsulated. These will all work if you want them. You're just going to have to run the forms and submit them to give yourself some form instances or process instances. But all of these examples are available to you. Just drop me an email and I'll send you a copy of this. So we have the normal there, but we've spent an hour talking about normal. So we're not going to talk about it anymore. Now we're going to talk about something a little different. Not unusual, however, to have a process that uses one or more forms. So if you're going to use one or more forms, that's fine, but it is going to change some of the ways that you need to configure the knowledge use. So in this case, we'll just look at the timeline real quick. I have activity one, and activity one has no changes. Activity two, I believe, is the one where I have a secondary form. So when you look at activity two calls the second form KV, two forms secondary, and it uses that form for this specific activity. I did this because this is the quickest way to do it. Obviously, you have the form actions activity that you could use to add a second form, and then to make that the default form for the activity. In this case, no reason. I only have two activities. The simplest thing for me to do if I want to add a second form for activity two is, rather than add an entire form actions activity, it's easier just to go into the advanced options and say, okay, well, I'll just drag this form in and use it for this activity. Okay, so that's great. Now I have an activity that uses form one, the original form, for the default, which means that activity one will use that form. Activity two will use the second form. Now that's fine as far as it goes. However, it does cause me a couple of little problems in terms of how I want to get data back, because I'm actually now going to need to get data back, not on one form instance, but for two form instances. And there's also a couple of other things that I'm going to notice whenever I run such a knowledge view, which is that I do have two forms, and I've given them various names, which I probably shouldn't have, but I've got my primary and my secondary form, my original form, my secondary form, whatever you want to call them. That's not important. What is important is there's different data on either form. So this is going to look kind of ugly, where I'm going to have, one row that has one set of data and then one row that has another set of data. I'm going to have all of these blank rows. Depending on what I'm doing, I may or may not want that. You may be perfectly happy with that, or you may want to have all of the data from both forms show in every row. And if you want to do that, you can, but you got to make a couple of changes. There's two primary things that you have to do to make this knowledge view work to pull these multiple form definitions. First thing you have to do is go to the Properties tab. And note, I am not saying forms associated with knowledge view here now. I'm leaving that blank because I can only pick one form. And if I can only pick one form, I'm not going to see my second form, so I can't use it. Happily, timelines associated with knowledge view is going to work for me, because both forms, in fact, all forms, whenever you submit a form and it kicks off a process timeline, that form automatically becomes an attachment to that process timeline. And if I add a second form or a third form, then those forms are also going to become timeline attachments. That's good for me, because what that means is I can say, okay, fine, let's look at the timeline itself. Because I have two forms, or three or five, or however many you have associated with that timeline, and I want to see all of the data from all of the forms, I can pick timelines associated with knowledge view, and it's going to return all of the forms for me. So in this case, I have two forms. It's going to return all of the instances of both forms. I don't really have to make any changes then over here on my Options tab. I'm still going to want to return form instances, but I'm just picking the form instances I want to return by changing the object that I picked from the form instance to the timeline instance. By the way, if you only have one form associated with a process timeline, technically there's nothing wrong with picking timelines associated with knowledge view. I mean, it'll work just as well. There are some, background reasons in some edge cases where you might not want to do that. But for the most part, this will work. We just recommend if you have a process with a single form, you pick forms associated with knowledge view. I think in most cases that's valid. But if you have multiple forms, you're going to need to do that. Now, again, there's the complicating factor of the form fields. Now, on both of these forms, I have a form field. Let's update and run it. I have a form field called input 1. I didn't get creative with the names. So there's an input 1 in form 1 and an input 1 in form 2. The fact that they have the same names so far is irrelevant. It will be relevant, but right now it's not relevant because Process Director is going to return this form, and input 1 on form 1 is a completely different field than input 1 on form 2. They're just not the same. And it, by the way, makes it a little, when I start configuring the columns, it does make it a little bit confusing because you see I have input 1 here, but also configuring this is going to be a little more confusing as well. Because I am now associating the process timeline with, I'm so associating the knowledge with the process timeline. That means when I start picking form fields, it doesn't know what form I want. So now I have to pick both the form and the form field to select the form. Previously, whenever we associated the process timeline with the form instance, so far, all we've had to do is pick the form field because we already knew what form instance we were looking at. Now we don't. And so I've got to be able to pull those two forms that are associated with the knowledge view and the field that I want, even though they're both named input 1 on both forms, because I'm looking at two forms. They are completely different fields. So it makes my configuration here a little bit harder. And of course, later on, when I come back and look at it and I see, form 2 field and form 1 field, but they both say input 1, okay, well, then I should expect to see something in all columns, right? All of this data should be filled, but no, it can't be because I'm returning a different row in the knowledge view for each form. So obviously for each form, both fields don't exist. Now, what I have to do if I want to see something like this over here where everything is thrown in once, is we've got to use a system variable. Now, I used input 1 as the name for both of these form fields. So this is one of those things where you got to think ahead about what you're doing. You're going to need to ensure that you have shared names between similar fields in the two forms so that whenever I configure the knowledge view, I can say, all right, well, I can just use the system variable. I can just type in input 1 as the system variable. And this will work. And the reason that it will work is because when each row is generated, it's going to look at the system variable and it's going to look for input 1. So when my knowledge view runs, it's going to go to this form here. Okay, this form is called KV, two forms, original 394. That's the form I'm running. Does it have a form field named input 1? Why, yes. Yes, it does. So I'm going to stick the word stuff in this field because that value is valid. Then it's going to go to the second row and say, okay, now I'm looking at the secondary form numbered 397. Does it have a field called input 1? Why, yes, it does. And so therefore it can convert the sysvar to the value of that field. So even though I have two different forms, and I'm going to see a separate row for each form, I can concatenate those two fields using the form field system variable, and I can ensure that I don't need to have these two fields displayed or these two rows displayed in my knowledge view. I can just display this row and every row will have a value because every form has an input 1. And so in the context of whatever form is the context for that row, or form instance is the context for that row, it's going to return the proper data for that form instance. So I can concatenate multiple values from multiple forms that I'm using in the same process timeline. Now let's talk about arrays. Arrays are a little wonky. So let me run my array fields knowledge. Note that for each of these form instances, so here is form 135, it has in square brackets index numbers 1, 2, and 3. That means that I have an array with 3 rows. Arrays are a little irritating in that if I return form instances, if that form has an array, it's going to return a row for not only the form, but for each row in the array. So in this case of form 135, I have an array that has 3 rows in it. So A, B, and C on one row, D, E, F, and G, H, I on another row. I can open the form. We can look at it. As soon as it populates, there's my array. So whenever we do arrays, it's going to return all of those rows. Now, what that means is if I have a field that is not in an array, like this non-array field, that field value is going to be repeated each time. So here's the second form, 136. It has 2 rows in the array, presenting me with items that are not fruit. Similarly, in this form, I've got most popular pets. So arrays are going to show up sort of wonky. Also, the way that array field searches work are a little wonky as well. Let's search. Okay, so I'm searching for COL, for broccoli. And let me add I for coli, because that's what you want in your food. Coli, E. coli. I have a problem. I've searched for coli, and I've gotten this row here. Cauliflower. Ooh, close, but not COLI. Certainly not spinach or asparagus. It's showing me 2 rows. I only want to see this row. Why is it showing me other rows? Well, it's not. What it is returning is a form instance that contains an array field that matches that text value that we placed in there. It's returning the form instance. So that means that even though what I really want is in row 1, it's going to show me both rows that are in that form, because arrays always show as multiple rows. I have this other one here, this non-array fields. And I can run that, and note it's a little bit different. Now I don't get those multiple rows, but what I do get is this. These comma separated lists. I've had to do something a little similar so that I get rid of my multiple rows for each form instance, because I have multiple rows in the array. So I go from having, was it 8 rows back down to 3. And the way that I did that was very similar to what we saw previously. I have input 2, input 3, and input 4. Those are my 3 array rows. I was going to call them arrays. These are array rows. And those are my 3 array rows. So once again, I can just call input 1, input 2, and input 3. Arrays are stored, no matter how many rows there are. Each array is stored, each column of an array is stored as a comma separated list. And because they are stored as a comma separated list, I can pull them back into a knowledge view and simply display them that way. So I can get rid of that, multiple rows for each form instance, and I can just concatenate them. Of course, when I concatenate them, then they're all going to show up in a single field as a comma separated list. So it makes it a little bit harder to query. However, having said that, it does look a little bit cleaner if I go in and I say input 2 contains, and we'll run our row here, and we'll go with COLI again. And now it only returns a single row because it's now searching, because I'm now only presenting one row. So whenever I do a search on an array field, it's actually going to look into this entire, however long it is, comma separated list, and it's going to see if it can find that value anywhere in the comma separated list. There are also some other wrinkles with searching. We have a documentation topic on that all by itself. And I should have batted this up. But in the condition builder, using arrays. Now this says inform validation conditions. And oh, by the way, let me click that link right there to get it back up. Well, that still didn't solve my problem. I need to go all the way up to the top to turn off that stupid highlighting. But now I can, hold on for just a second. Now I can go back to there. So this gives you a good idea. So forget, form validation conditions. It really sort of works this way everywhere. But we often run across it in form validation. So the important thing is this table right here about how array searches work, and how array validations work. So whenever you're creating these conditions, just be aware that arrays are going to work a little bit differently because of the more complex nature of how they work. And so we have some examples of equal conditions and greater than or equal than or in, so that you can see that there are some weird ways that arrays work for conditions. So just keep in mind that if you're going to use array, conditions become a little more tricky. So refer to the documentation for some examples of that explain to you a little better about how the arrays work. So those are array fields and how you have to handle them. We'll go with administrative. I'm not really going to get too in depth into this. You really do need a processes in error knowledge view. You only want it to return, process instances, like timeline instances. If you're still using workflow instances, I'm sure some of you are, because some of you have been around for a while, you're older customers. Although at this point, if you've been a customer since 2014, you shouldn't be using workflows at all. So you would actually look for process timeline instances as what you were going to return. And this is the condition that you need to use, processes in error. So there is process, and there it is, process in error. This is the condition that you need. You need to find process in error equals yes. And this knowledge view, if you're an administrator, is going to show you every process that's in error on your system. It's not going to show me anything because I don't have any processes in error on my system. I think I had this set up to this bad process KV. I think I had this set up to show me a bad process. So we will run it and we'll not do anything to this form instance. We'll close it and we'll go back to my process, and that is the process itself. We want this process instance. We want to open it up, and this activity is in an error state. It's in an error state because I have a completion condition here, but I haven't specified a default result. And so process director doesn't know what to do. Now, I don't know that that is true unless I have a processes in error knowledge view that shows me that something has gone wonky somewhere. So I need to be able to have a way that I can quickly open it up and run. And when I do, I go, okay, well, here's what's going on. I've got this process. It's a bad process, apparently, and it's running in activity 1, and this is its location. And let's take a look at it. Now, because I'm returning knowledge views, it's going to just pop open the instance properties. I got to set that up too, but we'll get that in a second. I need to be able to open up the instance properties. So I've done so now. I can go to administration timeline. And again, it will show me that this property is in an error state. So I'd need to go in and fix this error state, or in this case, fix it by just canceling the timeline. Okay, there we go. No more error problems. Timeline has been canceled. So now if I run processes in error, it's again going to be empty because I have no processes in error. Now, what I had to do, it needs this filter. I only want to return processes in error. I don't want to select anything on the Properties tab. On the Options tab, I'm leaving everything on because this is obviously an administrative knowledge view, and I might want to do any or all of these things. But the one thing I have done is ensure that it only returns timeline instances. The important thing here is when we go back to the Configure tab, some of the settings that we make. Now, it is different depending on what version of Process Director that you have as to how it works. You may have to set it to Properties, perform this action when entry clicked. Oh, I have no processes in error. Well, let's go back to here, and I can show you what the difference is. That's not a process timeline or knowledge view. This is. So by default, perform this action when entry clicked. Open inline in the browser. Cool. That's what we generally want to happen, right? Most of the time, we want to just be able to click on a form instance and open that form instance. But that's not always true, especially not true for management knowledge views. So depending on the version, if you have, certainly if you're before version 6, you do need to make a little change so that instead of open, you go to properties. Because now having made that change, if I go back here and I click on that form, it doesn't open the form for me. Now it takes me to the properties for that form. Most of the time for administrative knowledge views, you want to go to the properties. Now, if you're returning knowledge view instances, I believe the default to open a knowledge view instance is just to open its properties by itself. But if you're doing forms, the default open action opens the form instance, and oftentimes you don't want to do that. So if you need to go into form instances, you need to make that little tweak in the knowledge view so that in the perform this action, instead of open, goes to properties. So when I click on in this case, it's a form instance. When I click on that form instance, it takes me to properties. Like I said, if you're doing it in a by returning knowledge view instances, the open action opens the properties. I'm sorry, not knowledge view instances, process timeline instances. The open defaults to showing you the properties for the process timeline. So just keep that in mind. I also have one here called old processes, which is the, less than 90 days ago. I only put it in there to describe to you the complications of the 90 days ago thing. I've already done that, so we can elide past that now since I've already covered that previously. Then there are the system variables. So I have a system variable form. Let's do this the easy way. Let's just run the form. Well, it still hasn't been compiled, so it's still going to take a second to show up. I've actually got form instances here. So we're going to search for a user, and we'll pick Eric. Great, so we've picked Eric Wintemute. We're going to submit. There we go. We've submitted our form. So I know I have other versions of other instances of that, but let's go over here and let's run our form first. Oh, I'd already picked Eric previously. I should have picked Rick. My mistake. So we have two rows that are the same because I picked the wrong person. So I only had one field on that form, which was the user. However, I can look and see who the manager are. I can see what department they work in. I can grab their email. I can grab their manager's email, all through system variables. This is something that a lot of people don't understand when it comes to knowledge views a lot, which is that whenever you are, that's not a knowledge view again, whenever you are on the columns tab of your knowledge view, just because the choose system variable dialog exists, and it is often convenient to choose things from the choose system dialog variable box, that doesn't mean these are the only options that are available to you. Because you can use system variables as a column in a knowledge view. There's no rule against it. There's nobody stopping you. The cops aren't going to show up at your door. So in this case, I have this field called user. Now this is a user picker control. User picker controls return the user object. Now by default in a knowledge view, the value that will get returned from the user object for a user picker field will simply be their name. So whatever their name is in process director, that'll be displayed. However, it's still a user object. I still have access to all of its attributes. So if I want to show the manager instead of the user, then great, show manager equals 1. If I want to show the department, I've got a formatter for the department, the email. I can put it in the email format and use show manager 1 just to give the user's name. I don't know why I have running activity name here. It may have been something that I did previously. I'm just going to go ahead and delete column 6 there. But I can grab these system variables, and there's nothing that's stopping you from just going to string and setting your column to whatever system variable you'd like. Now, of course, obviously, whatever system variable you pick has to be valid in the context of the object that you're returning in the knowledge view. If it's not, then it's just going to return a blank value. But in this case, for user, every attribute that exists on the user's configuration page in the user administration section of Process Director is all accessible via system variable, and I can return all of this data for all of the users. And this, by the way, data is nowhere on the form. The only thing that's on the form is the value in the user picker, which technically is just the user UID, the GUID that gets assigned to each user. I'm just going out and based on who that user is, based on their GUID, I'm going out and just getting all of this other data that's assigned to them, and I'm just showing it via system variable. So don't forget the power of system variables. We've already seen it in terms of our ability to concatenate fields in a situation where I have two forms with one process. We've seen it with array fields so that I can just concatenate an array field so that I don't return multiple rows for an array. And extending it beyond that, any system variable that has a context for the object that you're returning for that row is going to return the appropriate value for whatever you're returning in that row, as long as it has some meaning. So don't forget that system variables are a thing. Finally, there is the export to Excel thing, which we talked about earlier, and I said we'd discuss it later. So now it's time to discuss it. So I have a knowledge view that is going to return some data, name, company, industry, listed. We've already seen the data that it is going to return. Now I'm going to go back and, okay, I have a show export to Excel icon. Fine. I can actually just display it in the grid. Okay, great. So I've got all of these companies and I've got some filters that I can put in, whatever. So I've got industry. So, oh, that's not what I wanted. Industry contains book. So let's search for what I got. Okay, now I've got 37 items that are in the book industry. And these are all my book sellers or book publishers, I suppose. Great. Now I've got my 37 items. I'm going to want to export them. Now, notice I have an export to Excel icon here, not an export to CSV icon. In fact, the CSV icon isn't there at all. And so what do you want to do with, and notice the name of the file, Excel-3_20_2025 space 10_42 AM XLSX. Well, I'm going to want to save that. And now I'm going to want to open it. Now, unlike a CSV file, I can, wow, that's really zoomed in. Let's go back to 100%. Okay, so here is my knowledge view that I've just exported with all of my booksellers. Although it's nice, it has borders, it has a little header. That's pretty cool, and it clearly is an Excel file. It tells me it's an Excel file and tells me, boy, you better not edit this or you might get viruses, but since I sent it to myself, I'm going to assume I'm okay. And so I'm now going to allow it to do editing, and of course now I can say, okay, well, I can do a little data mining now. I only want to see the book industries, who are the book companies that are listed on the NASDAQ. So there we go. I can do all that. Books, obviously, are, well, I don't really have anything else I can filter on. So I guess we can go and change it from NASDAQ to New York Stock Exchange, I suppose. There we go. Those are all my NYSE booksellers. Now, I've got to do a little extra work to make this work because this is an Excel file. And I've got to be able to get this data into Excel. And Excel has some particular requirements that CSV doesn't, right? CSV is just a universal file format. We can export anything in CSV. But if I export it in Excel, there's some hoops that I'm going to have to jump through to make this knowledge view work. And the first thing I'm going to need is I'm going to need a template that is built in Excel, which is this template right here, this book1.xlsx, which we're going to go ahead and open up and display. This is a Excel template. It has this header row here that I have just said, okay, we're just going to make a black header row. We're going to have white text. It's got some borders around these around these cells in this row. And then each of these individual cells has a name, and it has this weird syntax. And it has, ampersand equals BP dot name, company name, industry, and exchange. And these names that are after the ampersand equals BP dot, and that is required syntax, matches the actual names of the columns in my knowledge view. Name, company, industry, name, company name, industry, and exchange. So I have to have that Excel template. Now, again, in the documentation, this is all documented, Excel template, and it's in the knowledge view section, knowledge view exporting and reporting. So under knowledge views, and it gives you the example of how this works, how the syntax works for all of the exports, how Excel formulas would have to work if you were to export them into an Excel template that had Excel formulas. So this is all documented. So if you have any questions about the Excel template and the format and how the column names have to match your knowledge view, it's all there in the documentation. You have to do two things to make this work. First, you have to click Show Export to Excel icon. And then you must update the knowledge view. And there's a reason for this. Because this Show Export to Excel icon, once you update the knowledge view, will give you an additional option on the Properties tab, this Select Excel Template. So that Excel template that I showed you a minute ago, that exists in the content list. It has to exist in the content list because once I decide that I'm going to export to Excel, I have to specify the Excel template to which I am going to export. Without an Excel template, you cannot export to Excel. So I have to create this Excel template. I have to upload it to the content list. And then in my knowledge view, I have to specify that Excel template as the Excel template that I'm going to use to export the knowledge view. So on the Options tab, on the Configure tab, I have the Export to Excel icon there. I can also do just as we showed earlier, I can switch this to Export to Excel. Now, obviously, if I pick Export to Excel, this knowledge view will never display in the browser. If I access it, probably via URL, it's just going to automatically kick off my Excel export whenever it runs, just as we saw earlier. Now, note, I told you to take note of the name that I had given my Excel file. Well, the reason that it had the name that it did was because I have, using the current date time system variable, specified a file name when the Excel file saves as Excel dash, and then it'll show me the current date and time. So that's how we got the file name that we saw earlier. In fact, we can just run the knowledge view from right here, and we can see there is my file name, 3/20/2025, 10:48 a.m. XLSX. That 10:48 really irks me because that's the time. I don't know what time that is. I don't know where that 10:48 is coming from because it's 11:48 here. And I'm sure we don't have our server sitting out somewhere in Alaska, although who knows, maybe we do, but it's giving me the current date and time. So I can specify the name of the file, and by specifying the name of the file, and certainly by specifying current date and time, I can save multiple versions of this file. The important thing to know is that by using cur date time, I'm using a system variable. So the file save as will export the use of system variables for saving this particular Excel file. And I'll want to put that back to displayed in grid and click show export icon. Now, whenever you change either of these, the exported to Excel or the show export to Excel icon, whenever you turn them on for the first time, the first thing you have to do is update your knowledge view, because this property right here will not display on the Properties tab until you've picked one of the Excel options and you've updated the knowledge view. Only then will this option display. And you must go back over here and you must choose the Excel template file. It must exist in the content list, or else this whole thing falls apart. So that's a lot of hoops to jump through just to produce a prettier Excel export. For most people, I think the export to CSV works just fine. And if you want to pretty it up after an export, you can just hit save as, save it as an Excel file, and do all the prettying up that you want to do automatically inside Excel. But both of those options are available to you, so it's important to talk about the export to Excel option, simply so that you know that it's there available to you. And look, if you're doing it for reporting purposes, it's a lot easier just to do the formatting that you want to do ahead of time, so that whenever you export it, you already have like this pretty Excel spreadsheet that you can pass out to anybody that wants to look at it as a report. I know my Excel spreadsheet isn't all that pretty, but you can make yours prettier. All right, so that's knowledge use. That's all I have for you today. Have a great week. We'll look forward to talking to you next week. So long.